Chapter 10. Milo tossed and turned on the leather, or was that acrylic, couch. It had clearly been designed by a sadistic chiropractor who'd failed out of film school and decided to take revenge on the industry one spine at a time. Its last surviving spring seemed to be auditioning for the role of murder weapon, launching a sustained assault on his kidneys. This was his personal apocalypse now, minus the helicopters, napalm and Brando's improvised monologues. So really, more like Tropic Thunder if it had been filmed in a storage closet on a budget of loose change and optimism. Several hours earlier, Sleep had not only packed its bags, it had hired a travel agent, booked a first-class ticket to Tahiti, and left a passive-aggressive note about finding someone more committed to the relationship. Milo was left alone with his thoughts, which were currently holding a very loud production meeting in his head. He glanced at his watch. The glowing numbers mocked him. 11:47 p.m. Why the hell had he thought moving in here was a good idea? With a groan, he heaved himself off the couch. Sleep was for the weak, or those with actual beds. He wasn't sure whether to be excited about tomorrow's auditions or nervous. But he was certain that he needed to move and do something other than lie here imagining his vertebrae slowly fusing into modern art. A walk would do the trick. An absent-minded stroll around the lot to clear his head and tire himself out enough to tackle the couch again. Besides, what could possibly go wrong on an abandoned movie studio at night, other than what he had seen in Scream 3, Wes Craven's new nightmare, The Hills Run Red? Maybe he shouldn't go outside. Everything that had ever gone wrong in every horror film ever made was now running through his head. He turned back to the couch. If I get murdered, it's all your fault. The couch said nothing, which wasn't exactly reassuring. It was probably busy planning to kill him with that last remaining spring. Regardless, Milo pulled on his coat and stepped outside. The air was slightly cool and the quiet was broken by the slight rustle of wind through palm trees. He walked through the empty parking lot, passing a half-built spaceship. He stopped to study the prop. Of course, the ship looked fake, but special effects would make it real enough. The cardboard fins and spray-painted pool noodles would transform into gleaming alien technology through the magic of CGI and creative accounting. It was the perfect metaphor for Hollywood itself. Squint hard enough, throw enough money at it, and anything could look like a masterpiece until the lights came up. He walked on, his footsteps bouncing against the buildings with eerie percussion. He rounded a corner, walked across a green expanse of lawn, and found himself facing a Victorian mansion. It was the exterior set for the slasher film Sociopath, from the studio's attempt to cash in on the psycho craze of the 60s. It had failed miserably. Variety had been particularly brutal. With wooden performances that make marionettes look method, a laughable script that seems written by a Ouija board, and scares that land as flat as the cardboard sets, Sociopath is a forgettable footnote in the slasher genre. The only truly frightening thing about it is that someone greenlit this trash. The house, ironically, had gone on to have a more successful career than the film, becoming an iconic backdrop that was often mistaken for Hitchcock's work, which, given the original film's quality, was perhaps the greatest plot twist of all. Milo was about to turn back to his couch when something caught his eye, a faint glow in one of the upper windows, barely more than a candle's flicker. What the? Milo squinted, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him. Maybe it was moonlight reflecting off the faux glass? Nope. It was definitely a light, steady and unwavering. But how was that possible? He figured the house was a facade, but that wasn't possible if there was a light on the second floor. Forgetting all about his former horror film worries, Milo headed toward the house, pausing at the door. Was he supposed to knock? That seemed rather ridiculous given it was a set. So instead he opened it. "Hello?" Milo said, immediately feeling foolish. Who exactly was he expecting to answer? The ghost of Cecil B. DeMille. "Security? Is someone up there?" No response. He retraced his steps a little to see if the light had changed. Nope. It persisted, like an audience member at the movie theatre who is insistent on checking their phone. Milo walked back to the door, half expecting to hear ominous organ music swelling in the background, but there was only silence. Then he hesitated. What if it really was security? How would he explain his midnight wanderings without sounding like a deranged insomniac with delusions of directorial grandeur? He'd probably end up on TMZ. Homeless director claims storage closet is just like Spielberg's early days. Then Entertainment Weekly would pick it up. From storage wars to storage snores, another Hollywood dream dies. He'd have to admit he was living on site, which would definitely violate some clause in his contract. Probably right between no unauthorized sequels and don't feed the extras after midnight. They'd kick him out, put him on a blacklist, the other one, though at this point he'd probably qualify for both. What if it really was security? How would he explain his midnight wanderings without sounding like a deranged insomniac with delusions of directorial grandeur? He couldn't. He'd have to admit he was living on site. And then what? They'd kick him out? Put him on a blacklist? The other one? And then a sound came from somewhere close behind him. The unmistakable crunch of footsteps on gravel. Every hair on his neck stood at attention. He spun around so fast he nearly toppled over. Sweat beaded his forehead and he squinted into the darkness. Hello? Is anyone there? Lurking shadows offered a multitude of hiding places for... Milo had no idea. Axe-wielding maniacs, overzealous method actors, rival directors trying to steal the golden path. Another crunch, closer this time. His fight-or-flight response made an executive decision, and he opted to hide like a squirrel with stage fright. He ducked behind a conveniently placed topiary in the shape of famed director A. Hitchcock. No, the other one. Because what Victorian mansion would be complete without sculpted shrubbery? And then he held his breath. From his less-than-ideal vantage point, Milo caught a figure materializing out of the shadows, silhouetted against the faint glow of distant security lights. They had an unmistakable outline, a fedora perched atop a head, the sweep of a trench coat. Milo's brain short-circuited. It was the mysterious figure he'd been glimpsing for days. Hey! Milo leapt up from his hiding place, with all the grace of an actor on set in the 70s, 3 drinks deep and already forgetting which scene they were in. You there? Stop! The figure froze for a second, then took off running. Wait! Milo gave chase. I just want to talk. Are you following me? Is this about the golden path? Did Harrington send you? But Fedora man-woman zigzagged between buildings like Paul Greengrass on meth, tearing past the crumbling facade of an Old West saloon, feet pounding on boardwalks that led to nowhere. Milo vaulted over a prop cart with all the athletic grace of a first-time stuntman, sending foam rocks bouncing across the lot like escaped popcorn kernels. He careened through a Greek temple, or was it Roman? The columns had that generic something old appearance that could pass for any civilization with good taste in architecture. Nearly collided with a T-Rex that suspiciously looked like it had been repurposed from a miniature golf course, and found himself wheezing like a producer who just heard the words, over budget. His regular cardio routine consisted mainly of rewriting dialogue while pacing, and stress-eating craft services leftovers, which put him at a distinct disadvantage against Fedora man or woman, who apparently trained by running from studio notes. Come back. I have so many questions. But Milo was now alone. He straightened, surveying the lot, hoping for another glimpse of his elusive shadow. Nothing. He turned back toward the sociopath house, retracing his steps, only to find that the mysterious light in the upper window was gone. The entire building now stood as lifeless as a performance by Tommy Wiseau. Had Fedora even existed? Had the light? Maybe he was dreaming again, only this felt real enough. Milo ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. Was this what it felt like to lose your grip on reality? Had the pressure of making the golden path cracked his psyche? He sighed and trekked back to his storage closet-turned-office-turned-bedroom, his footsteps sounding suspiciously like, "You're losing it, Milo." He tried to ignore what his feet were saying and closed the door behind him. Then he dragged his chair over and wedged it under the doorknob, collapsing onto the couch, wincing as the vindictive spring dug into his lower back. Succumbing to exhaustion, he wondered, in a town built on illusions, where even reality came with special effects and reshoots, how was anyone supposed to tell the difference between truth and carefully crafted fiction? Maybe that was the real Hollywood secret. Nobody could. He mulled on that question for hours, but much like a comfortable sleeping position on this instrument of furniture-based torture, or a straight answer from a studio executive, the answer stayed frustratingly out of reach.